Hey guys, it's Olga from Olga's Flavor Factory. Welcome to my dining room, also known as my office. I'm just sitting down and writing down a few things that I'm going to be cooking next week, so my meal plan, and also what I want to meal prep today. I really love meal prepping. It saves me a ton of time, helps me get more organized for the week, and actually make sure that we eat the food that we're buying. So I'm gonna start with a lot of the things that are gonna help set me up for a good week. I'll be making snacks, breakfast, lunches, dinners, and I don't necessarily make a lot of entire meals when I'm meal prepping. I just meal prep ingredients and also do some shortcuts for myself. So that way the rest of the week, a lot of the prep is done for me. All right, enough chit chat. Let's go in the kitchen and get started. When I'm meal prepping, I do a lot of multitasking because I have a lot of different things going on at the same time since I'm prepping different parts of different meals. So I like to start with the things that take the longest amount of time. So for example, I'm gonna make some bread and I'll start that first. And it only takes about 5 minutes to mix it up, maybe even less. And then I set it off to rise while I'm working on other things. And then I'll start with chicken broth because that takes a while to cook as well. So I'll get that going on the stove. All these things don't take a lot of hands-on work from me. So I get them started and then they take a while to do their thing. And meanwhile, I'll do other parts of the meal prep. This is one of our family's favorite bread recipes. I make this all the time. It's so easy to make. You literally put everything into a big bowl, mix it up. It's called a no-knead bread, so you don't really have to knead it very long. If you're a newbie with bread making, this is a great recipe to start with. And it just tastes amazing. It's crusty on the outside, super soft on the inside. So I have some nice warm water. It's gonna go in the bowl. Into the water, I'm gonna add some active dry yeast, a little bit of olive oil, some salt, and flour, and that's it. Mix it up. You can even put this in your stand mixer with the dough hook. It'll be easier, and you don't have to mix it very long. Like I said, this is a no-knead bread, which means you don't have to knead it for like 10 minutes like most bread recipes do. I'm just gonna combine everything in this bowl and move on to the next thing. Okay, all the flour's incorporated. So that's about it, just a few minutes, it's all done. I'm just gonna cover it with plastic wrap and set it aside to rise until it's double, and then we'll shape the loaf. Okay, perfect. It's draft free, it keeps it from drying out, and it creates kind of like a humid environment in the bowl, so it's the perfect way for the bread to rise. I'm gonna make a big stock pot full of chicken broth. This one is huge, it's 16 quarts. I'm gonna use it for several different things, and whatever I don't use this week, I'll just freeze it for the future. So I already put in some chicken wings, chicken drumsticks in there, and some onions, a whole clove of garlic, some bay leaves, and black peppercorns and salt. That is kind of my starting foundation for chicken broth. I love the flavor of onions and garlic with the chicken. It's amazing. But since I'm gonna be meal prepping today, I'm also gonna add a lot of other veggie scraps in there as I'm meal prepping, which are gonna also give it a lot of flavor. I'm gonna get this started. It's gonna take a while to cook, so I'll add the vegetables as I'm going. I'm also going to add some of the chicken breast bone. So I bought chicken breast on the bone, and I'm gonna prep it for 2 different meals. I'm gonna make chicken fritters with them one day this week, and then another day I'm gonna make chicken parmesan. So I'm gonna prep that, and I'm gonna save the chicken breast for later. I'm gonna cut up part of it for the chicken fritters, and the other part I'm gonna use for chicken parmesan. And then the chicken bones, I'm gonna put in with the chicken broth. And this is a great way to get the most out of all of your groceries. Prepping meat is awesome. It saves so much time, and honestly, who likes prepping meat? It's just one of those chores that is not the most fun in cooking, but it needs to get done. So I like to make my effort worthwhile. Since I've already got all this stuff out, I've already got my cutting board dirty. If I'm making chicken cutlets, I'll often do the whole big bulk package of chicken, cut it up into cutlets, and only use what I need and freeze the rest of it for another time. And I already did the work. The next time I'm gonna make chicken cutlets, it's such a breeze. So let's get this chicken breast prepped and get this chicken broth started as well. So I'm gonna cut off the chicken skin. That doesn't take very long at all. And then we'll get the chicken breast off the bone. Kitchen scissors are awesome for prepping chicken and lots of other things too. Then I'm gonna take a knife, a sharp knife, and then I'm gonna cut it right here next to the breast bone. See, this is the bone. I'm gonna cut it right here next to it. And just keep cutting. This is the chicken tender. Cut next to it, and the bone is right here again, so we're just gonna cut until we cut it right off the bone. Trim off anything that needs to be trimmed off. Chicken breast is pretty clean, so you don't have to trim too much. And then this is the chicken tender. Cut next to the bone as well. And doing this yourself, you're gonna have much neater pieces than at the store. And if I'm cutting up chicken and I'm not making broth that day, I can just save the chicken bones or any chicken wing tips, the backbone or anything like that that I'm not using for the meal that I'm cooking. And I can just put it in my freezer, and the next time I'm making chicken broth, I take it out, put it in there. You don't even have to thaw it, and that way you can add more flavor and use every part of the chicken that you buy. Okay, so I'm going to fill up the pot with water, put it on the stove, bring it to a boil, and then simmer it for about an hour to an hour and a half. Meanwhile, I'm going to prep half of these chicken breasts for the chicken parmesan. So I'm going to cut them in half and then pound them out. Not too much. You don't want to go too crazy here. Kind of like you're making chicken cutlets. That's all I'm gonna do for that dinner. So I'm gonna prep the chicken. The rest of it is super easy. So I'm just gonna keep that in my refrigerator. And then the rest of the chicken breast, I'm gonna cut into small pieces and make chicken fritters. I'm gonna actually make the batter today. Chicken fritters are awesome for meal prepping. You can make the batter in advance, keep it in your fridge for a few days, or you can even freeze the chicken batter. I've done that before. It works awesome. But I'm gonna make them this week. So I'm gonna make the batter today and cook them tomorrow or a few days later. I want to get all this chicken done at the same time so then I can wash my hands, wash the cutting board, the counter, and everything. That way I'll be done with all that meat and I can move on to the vegetables. Usually I actually leave the meat for last when I'm prepping because I just, do all the vegetables, fruit, whatever first, and then I leave the meat for last. But since I'm doing the chicken broth today, I wanted to get that done first. Ever since I got my Instant Pot, one of my favorite things to make in it is hard-boiled eggs. Now, hard-boiled eggs are so easy to make on the stove, but I still prefer using my Instant Pot because it makes it even easier. The time is about the same, but I don't have to babysit. I don't have to remember when it boiled and all of that. So I like it, especially when I'm multitasking. If I'm just making hard-boiled eggs, then I can watch them and make sure they're not overcooked, because there's nothing worse than overcooked hard-boiled eggs. They're gonna be green and gray around the edge of the yolk and tough and rubbery. Nobody likes that. But the best part about hard-boiled eggs in the Instant Pot is how easy they are to peel. So it is a dream. The shells just come right off. Anyway, it's so easy. You just fill up the pot with eggs right out of your refrigerator. You don't have to bring it to room temperature. Add a cup of water. I use this steaming basket insert. It is not meant for the Instant Pot. I've had this for years. I use it for lots of other things, steaming vegetables, whatever, in my regular pots and skillets. But I love it because it fits perfectly in the Instant Pot, and then it's so easy to get the eggs out. So you can just add as many or as little eggs as you want, up to the max line, of course. You're gonna need to add 1 cup of water no matter how many eggs you use. Make sure the sealing ring is inside the lid. Close the lid. Turn the valve to sealing. See, it's venting. Turn it to sealing. You're just gonna turn it on high pressure for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, when the Instant Pot beeps, then you're gonna set the timer for 5 minutes and then release the pressure manually, which means you're gonna turn this valve so the steam comes out. You don't wanna let it release on its own because it's gonna keep cooking and overcook your eggs. And then transfer the cooked eggs to a bowl of ice water, or you can just take this metal insert out, fill it up with cold water and ice, and let the eggs cool and then peel them. Hard-boiled eggs are great for meal prepping. I add them to so many things. They're such an easy breakfast, lunch, or just a snack. And you can add them to lots of other things like salads and wraps and soups and all kinds of things. See how perfectly yellow the yolk is? It's not overcooked, it's super tender. Perfect hard-boiled eggs. The bread has risen beautifully, so now it's time to shape it into a loaf. And I have a parchment paper here. I buy these really long ones from a restaurant supply store. So I just folded it in half. Then I'm gonna take some cornmeal right here and sprinkle it on the bottom. It's gonna give a nice crunch to the bottom of the bread. And I'm gonna set it to rise right there. So that's ready. And I'm going to get a little flour on the countertop. Oh, it's so beautiful. Look at that. I love making bread. There's something so therapeutic about it. Okay, and then I'm gonna get more flour, sprinkle it on top. And then you just take the bread like this. You keep taking the edges, kind of like the petals of a flower, and folding it inward. And just keep doing that. Honestly, if you do it just like 4 times or so, it should be enough, but I like to make it nice and tight like this, and then flip it over. Then you just kind of do this, shape it into a beautiful loaf. This is really, really easy. This dough is so nice to work with. And then I put a little bit more flour on top, you know, it's gonna give it that pretty bakery look. There. And then I'm just gonna set it right here on top of the cornmeal in the middle of the parchment paper. I'm gonna move this over to my dining room table, and since I have it on the parchment paper, it's very easy to transfer. And a trick that I have is I take a really big bowl. Now make sure it's big because it's gonna rise. And I'm gonna take that big bowl, put it right on top of it. It's gonna double in size faster. It's not gonna dry out. I'm gonna wait for the bread to get nice and puffy again and then put it in the oven. While it's rising, I'm gonna preheat the oven to 500 degrees, screaming hot. And I'm also gonna put my Dutch oven in there to heat up at the same time that the oven is preheating. And then when the bread is risen, we're gonna transfer the bread right into that really hot Dutch oven and reduce the heat a little bit. One of my favorite parts of living in Florida is that our growing season is in the middle of winter. So January, February, March, even April and into May, we have growing season. So it's awesome. We have a farmer's market and I just love buying vegetables from there. So I'm gonna be prepping some stuff, putting it away and storing it so it stays fresh longer. So that's what I'll be doing while the bread is rising, the eggs are cooking, the chicken broth is cooking and all of that. So yeah, this is very exciting. It tastes so good. It tastes so much better than from the store. So whenever we can, I love to go to the farmer's market. I wish we could go every week, but you know, as often as we can. And during the summer, when the rest of the northern states are growing things, nothing grows in Florida. We're hibernating and hiding from the heat and buying our groceries from the grocery store. But I have got some treasures over here. Lots of beets. We took the boys with us and Josh saw these and he asked me to make borscht this week. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm excited about that as well. These carrots, oh, they're so good. I just don't even want to cook with them. I just want to eat them raw because they're so sweet. They're so much more tender and just amazingly delicious. So the celery, I'm going to make potato leek soup. So I'm going to cut off the bottom parts, wash them, and then the tops, I'm actually going to throw in right into the broth. I'm going to cut off the tops of the celery, also throw it into the broth after I wash all of this, of course, and then I'll store my herbs. I've shown you guys how I do this many times, so I'm not going to show you all the details. I have a complete video dedicated to it. I've talked about it many, many times and shown it in meal prep videos, but I do a lot of the same things for meal prepping. I prep my groceries. I want to make sure that they stay fresh as long as possible and that they're ready to be used, because when they're washed and ready to go and be cooked, I'm much more likely to use them. Look at this dill. Oh, it smells amazing. Even if you don't do any meal prepping, whenever you bring your produce from the store, take off the rubber bands because that is going to make it go bad faster. I'm gonna cut off the leaves from the beets and the carrots and I'm gonna store them in my fridge. If I have time, I'm gonna roast the beets as well. I love roasting beets for borscht or to use in salads. So I'm gonna roast them. If I have time, I'll do it in the video. If not, I'll just do it later tonight. And the carrots, I'm not really gonna prep them for anything. I'm just gonna store them better so that they stay fresh as long as possible. I'm gonna clean up the counter a little bit and start washing up the herbs and storing them. I'll get out my salad spinner for that. And then if I was gonna use any lettuce this week or spinach or anything like that, I would wash it at the same time while I'm doing the herbs. The salad spinner is great for that, obviously. I washed the celery and the leeks, and what I'm gonna do with the celery is I'm gonna cut off the leafy tops and I'm gonna put them right into the broth. I'm also gonna cut off these dark leafy parts of the leeks and I'm gonna put them in the broth as well. We're not gonna use them for cooking. They're super fibrous, you can't really eat them. So I'm gonna cut that off, leave only the nice white part and the light green part, and I'm gonna cut those up. Now leeks are very dirty, so I'm going to use a salad spinner to wash them, and I'll show you how I do that in a minute. I took off a few of the celery stalks because I'm gonna be using them in a few recipes this week. I'm gonna cut them up. They're right there in the sink waiting for me. So I'm gonna get those prepped as well. And then the rest of the celery that I'm not gonna use, I'm going to wrap it in foil. That is the best way to keep your celery nice and crisp, and it stays fresh for so long if you wrap it in aluminum foil. So that is an awesome tip for you. The way leeks grow, they have a lot of dirt around them, so they have them all through the leaves. They get really lodged in there. So the best way to wash them, even though I did wash them, they're still very grimy. So the salad spinner does a terrific job of it. So I'm actually gonna cut this part off as well, leaving only the tender light green parts. This. Then I'm going to cut it across and slice the leeks. Now I'm gonna bring the leeks over to the sink, fill up the salad spinner with water, and make sure you use your fingers to dislodge any dirt. Lift the insert with the leeks out of the water, discard the water that has all of the dirt in it. Keep washing the leeks as many times as you need to until the water is completely clean. I'm gonna store the leeks in the refrigerator until I'm gonna make the soup. So I put a paper towel on the bottom. I should have gotten a bigger bowl. So I put a paper towel on the bottom so that it soaks up any extra moisture. And they'll stay fresh for a while, for at least a few days, up to a week even. So that is gonna be delicious. This soup is so good. Creamy, comforting, and pretty healthy too. Woo. It's risen beautifully. I'm not gonna do anything fancy. I'm just gonna cut an X on top and transfer it right here. I actually feel the heat from the pot all the way over here. So I'm just gonna put it in there. Just like that. And cover it with the lid. Okay, let's get this into the oven. I lowered the oven heat to 425 and it's going to bake in the oven for about 25 minutes or so. Then I'm gonna uncover it, see what it looks like. Maybe it'll need another 5 minutes or so, but around 25 minutes is how long it takes in my oven. Meanwhile, I'm gonna chop up a bunch of vegetables, things that I'm gonna use throughout the week. So when I'm meal prepping, that's what I do. I just think of what I'll be cooking next week and I chop it up. So I'm gonna be using some celery, I'll chop it up right now. If I'm gonna be using carrots, beets, whatever, I chop it up and chop up the things that will store well. Like I don't chop up tomatoes or avocados or whatever. Those I leave for the last minute, but the things I can do in advance when I have a little bit of time, when I'm meal prepping, that's when I do it. So that's what I'm gonna be doing right now. I'm gonna peel the hard-boiled eggs, chop up some celery, some onions, might do some carrots as well for borscht later on this week, and cut up some cabbage and do things like that. I'm also gonna make some tuna salad that we can use for lunches. That's gonna be delicious, making tuna sandwiches or eat it just as a tuna salad with some tomatoes. That's how I like them. So that's what I'm gonna do right now while my bread is baking now and the broth is simmering. So the chicken broth, when it came to a boil, I lowered it down to as low as it goes, a very low simmer, and it's just cooking away. This is how much chicken broth I got from the 16-quart pot, and I also saved the meat. I'm gonna use that later. This broth, the one in the glass jars, I'm gonna store in my refrigerator, use it this week for soups. Since I'm making 2 of them, we'll go through these. And then the rest of these, I'm going to freeze, and I like freezing chicken broth in these containers. I really don't like spending too much time during the week on breakfasts and lunches, so I'm gonna prep a few things to make it easier on myself. I'm gonna prep some ingredients to add to omelets or just scrambled eggs. I'm gonna saute some mushrooms, bell peppers, and onions. Those are great to add to omelets or scrambled eggs. I'll store them in my refrigerator, and the rest of the meal is so easy to put together. Another thing I did was make a batch of yogurt, and I like to do that overnight, so I did that in the evening before going to bed after the meal prepping. And in the morning, I have a beautiful batch of yogurt ready to go for the week.
Alright boys, you want to cut into this? I think I'm gonna have some nice warm bread. Oh, look at that. How soft it is. Yeah? Okay, you try it now. Now I'm gonna have my piece.
Good. Can I try some?
This is so good.
Nothing like homemade bread, right? Here.
This is my slice right there.
Mama, put some ham on this.
You want some ham on it?
We'll do that.
You
I'll
want
get it in a
some
minute.
ham or jam? What do you say?
Ham and jam.
Well, not all together. Maybe in a separate one with jam.
Thanks for joining me in the kitchen, everybody, as I meal prepped for my family. I am so excited that I'm gonna have so many things prepped this week. I'll have a lot more details, all the recipe links, more information, links to other meal prep videos on Olga's Flavor Factory, so you can check that out there. If you haven't meal prepped, I encourage you to give it a try. It is life-changing. On the weeks that I do it, we eat a lot healthier. I cook a lot more often because so much of the prep is done, and I have a lot more time. Plus, I never have to wonder what to cook that day. The dreaded question at 5 o'clock or whatever time you're eating, because I already know. I also go into a lot more detail in my ebook about meal prepping, what exactly you can meal prep, how to store it, how to store fresh produce so it stays fresh as long as possible. So check out the Home Cook's Handbook for all that information if you want to learn more about meal prepping. As you can tell from me raving on and on about it, I love meal prepping, and I hope this gives you some great ideas to give it a try too.